Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo. We're here today to talk about The Division because it's the week of E3 and Ubisoft has revealed and teased content for The Division. They've revealed one piece of DLC, the Underground DLC, which is going to be launching this month, June 28th on Xbox and PC, and then August 2nd on the PlayStation 4. Now, I haven't been able to find a concrete price point for that. I've seen a lot of speculation, but nothing directly from Ubisoft regarding how much this is going to cost for those of us who don't own a season pass. I'm going to go ahead and say $14.99. That seems to be a lot of the speculation. That would make sense to me as a price point. But until they say anything officially, we simply don't know, which is a little bit frustrating because the DLC releases in like 2 weeks. The other thing was the Survival DLC. Again, we're already aware of the names of each of these pieces of DLC and the general premise of them, going all the way to the last piece of the DLC. But they've decided to actually make a teaser trailer for Survival that has pretty much told us nothing. We can just speculate and try to extract the little pieces of information that are there. I mean, the only thing that I could tell from watching the Survival teaser was that we're in a really bad place and people are trying to kill us. It seems like we've become the hunted rather than the hunters. There's nothing else to tell, though. So I think it's just Ubisoft recognizing how much of the player basis has jumped away from the Division at this point. They've seen a 93% drop in their players since the game launched. That's a huge, huge number. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they've been communicating with the community, the way that they've launched DLC. It's been a rough road. There's no doubt about that. That all said and done, let's talk about the Underground DLC because I'm actually really excited about this DLC, and I think if the price is right, there's a lot of awesomeness here. The Underground DLC is delivering another piece of PvE-focused content to the Division experience, which is something that I have said since like the second or third month of the Division that the game desperately needed. Forget the incursions, those are great, but the issue is we needed more scalable PvE content, things that didn't require 4 players. And when you look at how many people play the Division alone, I think the last time we saw the numbers, it was like 60-40. More people playing the game solo than playing the game grouped. This is the type of content that the Division needs to bring back certain players, to bring back the community. If there's any chance of it happening, it's going to be with stuff like this, not the incursions, which are focused on the small remaining pieces of the hardcore Division community. So Underground, as I said, is completely scalable. What I mean by that is that you can play it alone, you can play it with 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people. That is obviously fantastic. A lot of people are going to be excited about that right from the get-go. Now, the theme of the Underground DLC is random generation. So these are randomly generated missions. There's a randomly generated layout inside of these subways, these dungeons as they kept calling them. The enemies you're going to encounter are going to be random. The objectives you're going to have to complete are going to be random. And there's even a new set of traps and different gadgets you're going to have to deal with, like the skill jammer, that are going to be randomly placed throughout the dungeon. So you could run a dungeon that could be... It can look completely different, it could have a completely different layout. You could fight the cleaners and have no skill jammers. Then you can fight a different dungeon that has a different layout against the Rikers that does have skill jammers. It's randomly generated. It's not infinitely generated. There's not going to be an infinite number of combinations, but there's no doubt that it will be different each and every time you head out into a dungeon. And that is obviously a big positive. So those are two big positives we got right now. Randomly generated missions, scalable missions. And the third piece of the puzzle for me is the ability that we have to modify the difficulty of these missions. I really like where they're going with this. So we have our 4 difficulty modes now: normal, hard, challenging, and introducing heroic, which is going to be seeing level 35 elite enemies. Shotgun rushers be damned, that's going to be brutal. The second element is the number of phases that you're going to do for any of these dungeons. So you can have up to 3 phases. They're like tiers of the dungeon, except if you wipe on the second phase of a 3-phase dungeon, well, then it's game over and you have to start from the beginning. Now, I should mention increasing the difficulty, increasing the number of phases, and increasing the directives, which we'll talk about in a second, is of course going to increase the rewards. So there is a point behind trying to complete 2 or 3 phases rather than just 1. Now, the last piece of the puzzle are those directives. They're like difficulty modifiers, kind of like skulls in Halo. For example, we saw Fog of War, which removes your mini-map. Waste Not, Want Not, which prevents enemies from dropping ammunition for you and also decreases the amount of ammunition that you start the mission out with. They had Special Forces, which basically gives all of the enemies special ammunition type based on their faction, and there were 2 other ones. So there's a total of 5 directives or modifiers that we're going to have. I don't know if there are going to be more when the DLC goes live, but those are the ones that they showcased. All of this is accessed through the new Tactical Operations Center that is located below the base of operations. There is a bit of a story behind this, the idea being after you pushed all of these factions away down into the underground, they're trying to recuperate now, they're trying to gather their strength so they can come out back up on top and try and pound the division, the JTF, back into the ground once again. Obviously, this is going to turn into a Team Rocket blasting off again situation, but that's kind of the point. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about that also excited me, I mean, we didn't get to see a lot of the gameplay for the Underground DLC. I have to say that the stream they put together was super short. They ended up playing it on Heroic because that's what the crowd wanted. We didn't get to see a lot of it, which was a little bit frustrating. I would have loved to see them actually complete an entire dungeon. But one of the things that stood out to me was, you know, I think they're doing a really good job with the atmosphere and the overall environmental, you know, the art direction, the design of the Underground. I already appreciated the Underground in the Division. I know I liked how dark and just gloomy it felt. And they're trying to take that to the next level. We're seeing, like, you know, layers of fog inside of these new areas. The idea being that this was, at one point, completely flooded, and the water has since receded, so there's sewage and grime everywhere. If this game had smell-o-vision, you'd be vomiting into a garbage can just about every 15 minutes. I like that. I totally dig that. I hope that we see a bit more variety inside of these dungeons, maybe some areas that actually open up and are a bit larger. It's not all just really tight-knit, close-quarters stuff. I like that kind of stuff, and I think it does provide a layer of tension for the gameplay, especially when dealing with shotgun rushers and flaming grenades and things of that nature. But it doesn't mean that there can't be larger, expansive areas in these underground areas, and I hope that we do see some of that stuff. Like I said, we really didn't have an opportunity to see more than like 2 minutes of one of the missions, so I don't know what it's going to be like once you get to the different levels and tiers. All of the 2 locations that they highlighted that were generated had multiple levels, you know, so there was like a first floor, a second floor, and a third floor, so there's a lot of potential for, you know, locations to have unique firefights. I like that. I like the random generation. I like where they're going with this. This seems like a really solid piece of DLC. And like I said, you know, it's that addition of more PvE content that I think is absolutely necessary for the Division. Scalable PvE content, as I said. So I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this. You know, what do you think of the modifiers, the whole premise of the Underground DLC? Does it interest you? Is this enough for you to maybe end up picking this up, you know, spending your potentially $15, whatever the price point ends up being? I think that's going to be the big question for a lot of people, is when you look at the stuff that they added for free, like, you know, the incursions, I think a lot of people are going to find it difficult to justify spending money on this piece of DLC. I think that's the hardest thing that they have to deal with as a developer and a publisher now, is that the community is not really there anymore. You've got some hardcore people still playing the game, you know, people making content for it still, but most of us have walked away. Like I said, that number, 93% drop in the player basis. That's a legitimate number that was data mined. That's a huge number, you know. So when you show something wicked exciting that could potentially bring the audience back, but it's behind a paywall, that's going to be hard to sell. There's no doubt about that. And with the DLC coming out in, you know, essentially like a week and a half at this point, 2 weeks, whatever it'll be, they need to do some sort of a stream, you know, one of their developer streams, and they need to actually play through a full Underground mission. The problem is, they did this at the Ubisoft Special Ops event, which wasn't even directly part of the Ubisoft conference. It was at the Ubisoft Lounge. Most people probably didn't even watch this, and then they didn't play through an entire mission because they didn't have the time. They had to share it with Watch Dogs and Wildlands, you know. It was not a good place to showcase a piece of paid DLC. You know, you're trying to grab your audience, the audience that walked away, and you're trying to say, hey, look at this cool stuff we made. We hope you come on back. Not the best place to do it. You know, E3, when it comes to watching content for E3, I always say that really the only people who are going to see all of the trailers and all the gameplay releases are the hardcore, the people who are searching for the stuff, who enjoy digging through all of the reveals to find the stuff that they want to see. If you're just a normal person who sits down and plays the Division on the weekends, who doesn't spend a bunch of time consuming, you know, journalism and you know, press releases and news releases for games, you're never going to find any of this stuff. You're never going to find it. It's going to be buried, and then one day you're going to realize the DLC came out, you're going to look at it in the store on Microsoft maybe, or on your PlayStation, and you're going to be like, oh, what's that about? And then maybe then you'll go ahead and you'll search on YouTube and you'll watch someone else play it. I have to say that's probably the best bet here, is to wait until it's out and people are covering it. You know, YouTubers, whoever your favorite content creators are, maybe even your favorite traditional journalism site. See what they have to say about the DLC before you go ahead and pull the trigger. Obviously, it's important to inform yourself before you throw down the cash. I do know that there are some of you out there who are hardcore Division fans who are going to be picking this up day one. Maybe you own the season pass already and you're getting it anyway, so you'll probably play it. But I really would like to hear what you guys think about the Underground DLC, the premise of it. Does it excite you? Is this something that could potentially bring you back in the Division if you had left? You know, I think, like I said, there's some key elements here that are smart. The scalability is the biggest one for me. And I think a lot of you are going to be able to comment on that as well and agree with me that being able to play it with any number of players is a big deal. Let me know, guys. Throw all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.